In this movie, Sophie and James move into a new house after James inherits his father's business. To help out at home, they bring home a robot named Henry. As Henry starts acting more human-like, things get a bit complicated and there are many twists. At the beginning of the movie, a couple moved an old couch into their apartment. The girl's name was Sophie. She took charge of fixing the couch, but James did not agree with this idea. The couple was happy together and had a good marriage. Although Sophie's husband came from a wealthy family with a successful businessman father, he chose to live with Sophie instead of with his father. After they finished moving the couch, the couple started to have fun in their room. Their moment of joy ended abruptly when James got a phone call. He was heartbroken to learn that his father had died. He also found out that, as the only son, he inherited his father's business and property. Soon after, the couple moved to a large house in the suburbs. Sophie was unhappy with the changes but agreed to adapt to support her husband. The next morning, James prepared for his first day as CEO of his father's company. Sophie asked him to stay home, but he declined, wanting to make a good impression. With no job of her own, Sophie wandered around the mansion. Feeling bored, she found the numerous servants unnecessary and asked one of them to take the day off. She preferred to do things herself, unlike James, who came from a wealthy background. That evening, when James came home, Sophie told him she had fired all the housekeepers. James was upset because they had been with the family for years and relied on their jobs for income. Sophie said she had given them 2 years' salary and encouraged them to follow their dreams. Although James worried about managing the large house, Sophie promised to take care of everything. The next morning at work, James struggled with his new role as CEO. He tried to propose new ideas in a meeting, but his colleagues didn't agree. Then he received a call from Sophie, who said she couldn't start the lawnmower. James promised to come home in the evening to help Sophie before ending the call. When he arrived, he tried to start the lawnmower but struggled since he had never used one before. He felt frustrated about having to handle chores after Sophie fired the housekeeper. The next morning, Sophie complained that they were happier in their old apartment, which irritated James. She said she wasn't used to living in such a big house and didn't like having servants, as she didn't want to order people around. In the afternoon, James talked to his assistant about the problem. The assistant reassured him that money could fix everything and told him about a company that sold robot housekeeping. Later, the couple visited a tech company and met the CEO, Julian. He showed them several robot models that looked like humans. James asked Sophie to choose one, and Julian recommended a female robot named Jessica. Sophie worried that a beautiful female robot might make her feel insecure, so she chose a male robot instead. Julian then introduced them to a male robot named Henry. To demonstrate his obedience, Julian made Henry lick James's shoes, which he did without hesitation. They brought Henry to their mansion, where Julian set up a charging station. The robot started working efficiently around the house. However, Sophie still felt uneasy giving him orders, as she perceived him as human. Over the next few days, Henry handled the household chores well. One afternoon, he accidentally walked into Sophie's bedroom while she was undressing, making her feel very uncomfortable. She later told James that Henry had stared at her, but James dismissed her concerns, saying the robot didn't matter. During the game, the robot, Henry, kept defeating James, but James did not mind. He enjoyed the robot's company and had a great time. He also talked about how he felt sad about his father's death. Henry expressed sympathy, showing a human-like personality. The next day, Sophie learned that James's co-workers were visiting the house, so she started cleaning. Henry helped with the chores and made a few jokes to ease her stress. This won her trust, and she gave him a Charles Dickens novel as a gift. Later, while taking a break, Sophie offered Henry some wine, and he drank it without hesitation. Sophie wondered what happened to the wine, and Henry explained that everything resets automatically when he is at his docking station. When James's co-workers arrived, they were impressed by how human-like Henry looked. Henry even quoted Charles Dickens, which amazed them further. Sophie mentioned that sometimes she forgot Henry was a robot. James did not seem pleased by this comment. One night, Sophie was awakened by unusual noises outside her home. She went to check and found Henry lying naked on the ground. She woke him up, but the robot had no memory of how he got there. He said he had a dream where he was a human. As they went back inside, Julian arrived and was very angry to see them. Sophie explained that she had found Henry lying outside. The next day, the couple called Julian and told him what happened the night before. Julian examined the robot and concluded it was just a minor glitch. Sophie mentioned that Henry had been dreaming, but Julian said that was impossible. He then warned the couple to be careful and prevent Henry from developing emotions, as it might cause him to act more like a human. After Julian left, James blamed Sophie for Henry's behavior. He pointed out how she treated the robot like a human by giving him books to read. Sophie reminded him that he also treated Henry like a human by playing racquetball with him. Later, while Henry was giving Sophie a massage, he began kissing her upper back and then her lips. Sophie suddenly woke up from what turned out to be a nightmare, lying next to her husband. In the afternoon, Sophie intentionally opened her bedroom door and thought about the dream to pleasure herself. Afterward, she saw Henry outside her room and wondered if he had been watching. Henry asked if it would make her happy if he had. A few days later, James saw Sophie and Henry laughing together by the pool and felt jealous. He went back to Julian and expressed worry that the robot might be making advances on his wife, which could ruin their marriage. Julian assured him that Henry was not programmed to love but to satisfy his owners. He suggested that the real problem was between James and Sophie and needed their attention. When James got home, he told Henry to stop flirting and reading with Sophie. The robot agreed, but said both owners had to agree. James became angry and ordered Henry to go back to his docking station. He then told Sophie to stop reading with Henry, which upset her. They argued like children, and she decided to move back to their old apartment for a few days. One day, while James was in the bathroom, he noticed his razor was missing. He called Henry and asked him to get a new one. Henry entered the room naked, which shocked James. When James asked why, Henry said he was fulfilling his desires. Henry then started shaving James and kissed him. Initially hesitant, James soon kissed him back, and they ended up being intimate. The next morning, James woke up alone in his bed, unsure if the previous night's events had been real. He saw that Henry had made breakfast but was reluctant to talk about what happened. Later, at work, James called Sophie to try to repair their relationship and suggested they go on vacation together. She seemed uninterested and recommended they discuss it face to face. Eventually, Sophie came home and asked Henry to give her a massage. He agreed and began massaging her, but then suddenly kissed her. Shocked, she asked him why he did that, and Henry replied that he wanted to please her. This frightened Sophie, so she ordered him to return to his docking station immediately. When James came home in the evening, Sophie, upset, told him everything that had happened. This only made James angry, and he shouted that Henry did what Sophie wanted. He accused her of encouraging the robot's behavior and treating him like a human. After their argument, James confronted Henry and demanded to know why he had kissed Sophie. The robot claimed that she had asked for it, which made James even angrier. He punched Henry hard in the face and ordered him to go back to his docking station. Henry obeyed and lay down, but James angrily unplugged the charger and left. The next morning, the couple called Julian because they wanted to return Henry to the company. James went to work while Sophie waited for the technicians. Soon after, Henry came up to her and said his charging station had been disconnected. He asked if they no longer needed him. Sophie told him that her husband was upset because he had kissed her. Henry called James a hypocrite, saying they had also been intimate when Sophie was not around. Sophie was shocked and hurt because she did not expect her husband to act like this. Julian arrived to check what was wrong. Sophie asked him to take care of the robot and quickly left. Inside the house, Henry looked at his bruise in the mirror and wondered why it hurt so much. Julian told him to go back to the docking station. Henry refused and called him a liar. Elsewhere, Sophie went to James' office and confronted him about cheating. He admitted he was jealous of Henry because Henry seemed perfect, and Sophie seemed happy around him. James said the robot took advantage of his weakness. Sophie felt guilty and realized her feelings for Henry were not real. They made up and hugged each other. Their moment was interrupted when James noticed several missed calls from Henry. When they got home, they found Henry naked in the backyard. He was sad because he knew he had disappointed them. They told him he would be sent back to the company to be fixed and find new owners. James told Henry to go back to his charging station, but Henry asked to stay outside until his battery died. The couple agreed out of pity. Later, they went to the tech company to find Julian, but saw it was full of FBI agents. The female robot Jessica was upset and wanted to return to her owner. A social worker told her she was a real person who had been brainwashed into thinking she was a robot. James and Sophie were surprised to learn that Henry was also human. It went home with 2 FBI agents to find him and Julian. Julian suddenly appeared and shot the FBI agents. He revealed he had taken Henry when he was 3 years old, after his mother abused and abandoned him. Julian loved Henry like his own child and made him perfect. He was upset because the couple was abandoning Henry, just like his mother did. Julian then shot at the couple, but Henry stopped him. He fought Julian and killed him with his own gun. Afterward, Henry picked up a knife from the ground. He felt ashamed and thought he had no reason to live. The couple tried to stop him, saying they loved him. It was too late. Henry committed harakiri by stabbing himself in the stomach. As he died, he said he had always known his feelings were real. He apologized for the trouble he caused and passed away. Sophie and James were heartbroken and cried together. In the final scene, 5 years later, the couple was at a park with their son, Henry. When the boy asked how he got his name, Sophie said he was named after someone very special. She told him it was a long story, and he would have to wait until he was older to hear it.